Okay, awesome. Great. Welcome, everybody. I thought I would just start off by offering a very short embodied practice for those who are interested as a way to connect with your body. The work we're talking about is very embodied work. And, but we'll talk about it from kind of a mindful, mind-oriented perspective too. But if you're interested in connecting with your body for a couple minutes first, you're welcome to turn your attention toward yourself. Having your eyes open or closed is your choice. And one way to kind of shift your awareness toward your body may be adding some movement. So, one way you might add movement could be shifting from side to side. So, if you're interested, one possibility, if you want to add some movement on purpose, could be shifting your body from side to side. Or you may discover another kind of movement for yourself. Maybe you're interested in moving one hand or one part of your body. If you start moving in some way, you may begin to notice some sensation. And that may be wherever you're connected to a surface. So it could be connection points or contact points between your body and a surface, beneath you, behind you. Maybe you're aware more of sensation in your body, in your muscles. So, an invitation to explore movement in some way, if you want, and possibly noticing feeling or sensation in your body related or connected to your movement. You may discover that what you feel, the sensation that you notice, may guide the choices you're making about the size of the movement or even the type of movement you're making. You may not be interested in sensation at all. And maybe you're focusing on the mechanics of the movement or the shape, the choices you have. Not doing anything at all here. And whenever you're ready at your own time, the invitation to guide yourself back toward the meeting and that process of shifting back is you're in charge of that. So the timing is up to you. Great. And again, welcome all. Thank you for being here. My name is Dave Emerson. I'm the co-founder of the Center for Trauma and Embodiment, and the Director of Research and Public Policy here. Really happy to invite you to this conversation and our guests. And for the format today, what I'll do is turn it over to our guests to invite them to introduce themselves and share a little bit about their scope of practice, their scope of work, and their perspectives, and then we'll turn toward a conversation. Some of what we talk about may be more kind of quantitative, recognizing that movement and the arts are continuing to emerge as evidence-based practices related to mental health. But I'd also like to invite you to just consider your own personal experience with movement, dance, the arts, and what it means to you, because the meaning, the qualitative, the personal, is at least equally as valid as the external or the measurable. So for myself, when I'm reflecting on this, I'm thinking about how important music has been for me in my life. Like I was going to say desperately important at times through my, teenage years, for example. But just how there aren't always words for how important these things are to us. So I would invite you to hold that space a little bit too, if that's interesting as we go today. So with that, I'm going to turn it over and welcome our guests, starting with friend and colleague Desmond Hazley, and we can go from there. Desmond, welcome.
Can you hear me now? Okay. I wanted to make sure that we give credit where credit is due. This has been 2.5 years in the making between a conversation and myself and Dave, figuring out how to have this discussion of bringing forth arts and humanities as the legitimate tool that it is, and having people see themselves as presenting treatment and options that are evidence-based and part of something even larger. I'm an integrative health specialist in Los Angeles, and I am now incorporating medical arts and humanities. Medical arts and humanities has been studied for now around 26 years, and it started at Stanford University's medical school. I had no idea what this was 2.5 years ago until I received an email. And it's so important that we know that people in other disciplines are using arts and humanities in so many creative ways that we cannot not even imagine. And what I'm going to do right now is actually drop there you go, the website for Stanford's program called Medicine in the Muse. They have incorporated arts and humanities at every level of healthcare provision in their medical school. The healthcare professionals, the students in their medical schools, and the patients all have incorporated arts and humanities as part of health and wellness, not just from the physical aspect, but also from the mental health and trauma aspect. So they've been doing this for a very long time, but yet not many people know about this type of program. And we, as providers of services for mental health and trauma care, we usually try so hard to make people understand that what we're doing is just as legitimate as any other conventional type of services in mental health and trauma care. We don't have to do that anymore because there's so much being made available through these other disciplines that we don't tap into because we have been trained to stay in our lanes. So for me, this is so important because we're not alone in what we do, but we feel alone because we have to try so much harder in mental health and trauma care to make people believe the effectiveness of what we do through arts and humanities.
Thanks, Desmond. That's awesome. Thank you. Anybody want to go next?
Dave, I'm glad to go. First, thank you so much, Dr. Hazley. The whole time he was nodding. It's just so wonderful to hear that. It feels very validating. But anywho, my name is Sarah Carter, and I am a part of the Center for Trauma and Embodiment through trauma-informed improv and play, which is a therapeutic treatment framework utilizing improvisation and play to treat complex trauma symptoms. I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Massachusetts. I'm also a registered drama with a D therapist through the North American Drama Therapy Association. And so I've been working in private practice using drama therapy, teaching drama therapy at Lesley University and Boston College, and then also work with CFTE on our TIP, trauma-informed improv and play model. That's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Who'd like to go next?
I can jump in.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey, everybody. My name's Mark Tamasic. I'm the chair of the Santa Monica College Dance Department, and I've been at SMC since 2012. But I've been teaching dance for almost 40 years. And I've taught various populations in that time, university students like I'm teaching now, professionals, pre-professionals, but I've also had a specialty in working with dancers with disabilities, as well as people with developmental disabilities and cognitive impairments and senior citizens. And that work is I've done primarily through an organization called Dancing Wheels Company and School, which is located in Cleveland, Ohio. And Dancing Wheels is the first what we call physically integrated dance company in the United States. And some of the additional work I've done with Dancing Wheels has been to create a dance teaching manual for teaching physically integrated dance. And most recently, we've developed a teacher certification program. And I've seen over and over from doing this work firsthand how the arts and dance in particular can awaken the spirits, improve physical and mental well-being. And what Dave was saying really resonated with me about, the qualitative aspect of it too is always super exciting to me as a mover and as a teacher to really feel dropped into my body and feeling like when I'm dancing, it's an expression of my entire being, not just a shape or a specific movement, but it's my whole being that's being expressed. At Santa Monica College, I met Dr. Desmond Hazley, I think a little over a year ago, and she was taking one of my classes, and at some point she came up to me and started talking to me about medical arts and humanities, and I was really never heard of that concept before. But I feel like I've been incorporating concepts of medical arts and humanities as well as trauma-informed teaching throughout my career, because really in particular to work with the populations I've worked with, those approaches are absolutely necessary. So I look forward to this discussion and talking a little bit more about the work that we're doing at Santa Monica College with medical arts and humanities. Thanks.
Sorry, Jenny, I just dropped you in there. Thanks, Mark.
Okay, why not? Hi.
Is that okay?
Yay. Oh, sorry. I think I misheard. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I'm Jenny. Hi, everyone. I am an independent artist working primarily on gun violence prevention and criminal justice reform through the arts in Massachusetts. My background is in music, theater, and tap dance, but I very quickly became restless in the arts world, wanted to find a way to kind of use it to address social issues in the community. One of my earlier projects was directing a live production called Moving Stories, which was comprised of a cast of women who met while incarcerated at MCI Framingham. And they actually started a dance company while incarcerated. And then when they came home, they continued dancing together. And we put together a show where they shared kind of like moth-style stories around their experiences, specifically with incarceration and addiction, and wove it together with music and movement. I then worked as an educator at Roca Boston, which works with young men at the heart of urban violence in Boston. I'll fast forward a little bit. During COVID, I started Tap for Joy, which is an outdoor free tap dance program for students of all ages and skill levels. And I really did it for myself because I was depressed and numb and isolated. And I was like, oh my God, I just need to tap dance. So started putting boards out in the park and people came. And, it was a way of being communal, having rhythm, shared rhythm, movement, being together. And then over the last 4 years, I've kind of pivoted to documentary film. I made a documentary called Hear Me, which features 7 young people from Western Massachusetts who've been impacted by gun violence. And then over the last 2 years, I've been working with teenagers in the juvenile justice system and locked facilities. Made a second film called If I Ran the City, which interviewed them around issues that impacted them in the community and how they ended up with system involvement. And then if they were the mayor of their city, what would they do to help kids? And both of those films also featured an original music score by young people. And then this past year, I started teaching music in the Department of Corrections, the state prison system. And all of that is to say, I'm particularly interested now in not only using the arts as a tool for processing emotions and regulating the nervous system, but also as a way to, articulate systems that have caused harm and been oppressive, and using their lived experiences and voices and stories to articulate that shared experience, realize they're not alone in that, and then have some power over that narrative. So thanks. Happy to be here.
That's awesome, Jenny. I'm going to invite everybody. I'm going to put us all up here as a panel at this point, and invite the audience to feel free to put any questions that are coming up for you in the chat, and also or raise your hand. I would like to kind of start with something that you just said, Jenny, that I'm curious how this resonates for the whole group in the panel here, which is you did it for yourself, the TAP project you started for yourself. And I'm just curious about that. And I'm also interested to invite Desmond to talk about research in a moment as well, because we want to talk about the quantitative stuff. But that quality of doing it for yourself, I'm just interested, like Mark and Sarah, I can relate to that from this sort of embodied yoga trauma care perspective. And I'm wondering how that, lands for everybody. Or Jenny, if you want to say more about that, like the motivation to do this for your own well-being, and then kind of like sharing that in a collective way. Do you want to say anything about how that developed for you?
Sure. I've always just sort of been a very dark and existential person. And since I was a little kid, tap dance has always just been a way for me to get out of my head and not feel terrible. So it's pretty simplistic in that way, where I was literally just in my apartment, feeling despair and, do the whole therapy medication thing, but it wasn't quite doing it for me. And I just thought, what's the thing that has always brought me back to myself? And it was tap dance. So I was like, whatever, I have nothing to lose. I'm just gonna go for it. And it wasn't something I really thought too much about, other than that it's just always been something that brings me back to myself.
How about the connection? So, but you decided to go outside, right? Like you decided to
Right.
do you remember what?
Yeah, well, it's interesting, right? Because it was really a necessity during COVID. I never would have done that in normal times. Usually I would tap dance in a dance studio, but they were closed, and I couldn't tap in my apartment because my downstairs neighbor would yell at me. So the only place I could go was public spaces. And I think that's why actually it caught on so much, is because I was bringing it out into the public sphere where everyday people are. And we did it right by the river in Cambridge. So people walk, bike by, whatever. And everyone's like, oh, I tap danced when I was a kid, or I always wanted to tap dance. It's one of those things. And it was for all ages, all skill levels. So yeah, I think, and I found that also with the other work, bringing it to people rather than waiting for them to come to you.
Awesome, thanks. I don't know, Mark or Sarah, if you want to say anything there about like, what brought you to this kind of work? Was there some of that personal element, or how did that work for you?
Yeah, certainly for me, I started out as an artist and was pursuing theater and singing and dance, and did my undergrad in theater, and was doing the life of the starving actor a bit, and traveling with an improv troupe, and I was drawn to it. It felt life-saving for me. I was a very shy, reserved kid, and being on stage just let me open up, where I felt the most like me. I'm also an adoptee from Lebanon, and grew up in a pretty, predominantly white Irish Catholic neighborhood, and went to a Catholic school. And I mean, for me to be an outsider, I'm not even really that much of an outsider, but it was important for me, I think, in terms of being able to explore my identity and try on different roles and kind of find my way to my culture through dance and through theater. So it felt sort of innate and natural to make the transition. I knew how helpful it was for myself, and I, imagined that other people and other artists innately knew that as well. And so then to find the community of drama therapy and the expressive arts therapy, it was the same story and over and over. Like this is so therapeutic for me, and I want to share this with others.
Thanks.
And I can say that my start in this kind of field of work was not altruistic at all. So back in 1994, I was a dancer. I was living in Cleveland, Ohio, and I was approached by the artistic director of Dancing Wheels to do some guest dancing with their company. And my initial thought, embarrassing to say, but was, oh, this will be easy because I'm going to be working with people with disabilities. And immediately after the first rehearsal, I was like, wow, like this is something so much more intense and detailed and larger than what it is. So I was just from that first rehearsal, just like sucked in. I'm like, this is awesome. This is what I want to do. So that's kind of how I started working with those populations in particular. And then, yeah, I just feel like I tell my students this, that, when I danced professionally for about 20 years. And like when I was dancing, I remember people like telling me like, oh, you always seem so calm. Like nothing seems to ruffle you. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, that's just how I am. Right. And then it wasn't until I retired from dancing and all this other stuff started to come up because I wasn't dancing 6 or 8 hours a day. So I tell my students, like, I am a big advocate of therapy, but I never thought about going to a therapist until after I retired from dancing, because there was something about it that it just, everything got expressed out of my body. And it was just some way of healing myself. So it's interesting to have that kind of perspective now, being not have been a professional dancer for now almost 20 years, and how I have to find ways now to bring that back.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate of therapy too. And for me, I wonder, as you described that, I'm relating to being able to make use of therapy after sort of finding an embodiment practice that could really help me connect with myself. Therapy then had more meaning for me. So that's how I'm relating to what you said. And I wonder if other people may have some of that experience too. Thanks everybody for sharing some of that, sort of the kind of the motivator, the origin story. I'm sure we'll want to talk a little more about that. Desmond, I just wondered if you wanted to say anything about anything there, but also the invitation around research that may be sort of standing out for you at this point that you want to make sure to highlight.
I can talk from the perspective of going into dance as a way to recover from being a caregiver mentally and physically. That's how I met Mark. And I needed something to help me heal inside and out. And dance, and being my age, I'm 54, and going to a community college to learn dance was a very scary thing, but I felt it was necessary for me to heal. I needed something that was going to allow me to work with my body and my emotions at the same time in a safe space. So it's my origin story started a year ago for dance, and it's still evolving, and it opened me up in so many different ways in my personally and professionally because I began to understand exactly the mind-body connection of the arts and humanities. Because for the most part, when people say arts and humanities, people think of it as hobbies. Oh, I like to dance, I like to sing, but it's so much more. And the research is now showing how much it impacts our healing process, how much it impacts how we interact and basically come together as community and heal each other. So I'm learning firsthand how it all fits together, just being in an environment where I can explore myself and interact with others as we all learn an art form and learn to heal at the same time.
Really interesting. Thanks so much for that. Jenny, I noticed, so just in case folks haven't seen the chat, you put a link in there for your film Hear Me, and I wondered if I saw that film and it was very, very moving. I saw it myself alone. I know you do public screenings too, but it is accessible for anyone here to watch as well online. And I'm thinking about what you all are talking about in terms of just expression, some version of expression as a sort of a liberating practice in a sense, whether it's movement or dance, improv or art in different ways. I'm just curious, Jenny, if you want to talk a little bit about your experience making that film with these young people who were finding language for their experience. In my view, that was, hard to come by. It's sometimes really hard to talk about our experiences like that for anyone, but especially young people. What was it like to help kids find words for this?
Sure, yeah. It's interesting because I basically spent a few months just kind of hanging out with them, going to get food and whatever, talking about life. And then we sat down for formal interview, but it was usually like in their house and in their space. And it was an informal conversation. So, I mean, we had a camera, but it was 2 hours of just talking and then, taking very small pieces of that and editing it into a film. And I actually didn't experience much fear or anxiety on their part. Who knows why? It was a range of young people from ages 10 to 24, 5 male, 2 female. When we started looking for young people who wanted to share their story, we're making a documentary about gun violence. Do you have a story you want to share? There was a lot of interest, like 20 plus. And what I've found also in the second project in the juvenile system was it's more of just like a confusion as to someone actually being interested in their story, and not just viewing through the criminality lens of like, you're a perpetrator and you're in the system and that's it. Like, we don't want to look at the humanity of the situation. So I think just forming a relationship and just having a very candid conversation was easy. It felt easy. Maybe it wasn't internally, I don't know. But what actually ended up happening was both films got censored by the people either funding it or, well, in both cases, the people funding it. And that, right, particularly for young people in this quote unquote system, I guess they're used to kind of having reality swept under the rug or people not wanting to face things, but they were not at all surprised. They were like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. So I think that it's to be able to share their story. And now Hear Me, we've now, had to get a lawyer, and that's why we're able to show it. The second one will probably never be shown. But I think it's empowering to know that their truth is so powerful that it actually threatens pre-existing systems, and also find a community around that. Like, we all have this shared experience. We're not just like dangers to the public and menace to society. Like, this is a deeper issue. So I think the arts can be really powerful in that way, where storytelling, but then also integrated with music, visual art, whatever, to come together for one coherent message of like, this is our shared experience. Yes, it's traumatizing, but it's also empowering for us to like articulate it and have a shared narrative and be able to call it out. And hopefully that would lead to more accountability.
Yeah, that's super impactful. And just as almost like a tangential thing for this group, if I recall, Jenny, tell me if I'm wrong on this. At least two of the youth were, one of the younger kids was like football was a big thing for them. Like I feel like they were playing football a lot during the interviews. And then another kid was like lifting weights or doing something physical. I just noted that as an embodied care provider, and I think a lot of folks here are embodied care providers, that just the natural being drawn toward their body in a way that felt grounding and safe to be in front of you. I noted that. Did anything else stand out for you around that element?
Me,
Yeah, I mean, did you notice that something that you saw more than we saw in the film, or was it just sort of
well, one of the things that pretty much all of them said was like basketball was the thing that I love, and that where they found community and belonging and movement and whatever, and being able to go to the park. At the same time, that was also where a lot of them got exposed to activity in the neighborhood. So it was kind of a double-edged sort of wanting to be a kid and explore and move and whatever, and then that interfacing with the reality of our society. But it's an interesting point. And I think also being in jail, right, where you're literally confined in a cage, and are not able to move is the other end of that.
yeah, constraint movement? So I'm thinking as you're talking about that, Sarah, the work you're doing with improv and theater and drama, you sometimes work through scenes, right? So in the film, and I'm just encouraging everybody here to check out the film, especially with your backstory, how it was censored, how important it is that we hear these young people. Sarah, in your work, you're creating scenes and exploring possibilities. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the mechanism of that works?
Sure. So the TIP framework follows sort of a phased treatment trajectory called, we call it ACT, Embody, Empower. And another way to think of that is learn, practice, do. And so what that ends up looking like is, and if we're looking at this as a therapy group, and we've primarily worked with youth and some young adults, who have been in residential treatment, group homes, some congregate care setting, in and out of foster care, et cetera. We are introducing movement and improv and spontaneity at the start as a way to sort of warm them up to just sort of have permission to use their bodies, to feel what it's like to be in your body, to feel what it's like to take risks in a safe environment, and in a really low stakes kind of way. And that is all geared toward preparing them to act in improvised scenes. And then the scenes explore things that would just relate to them and their lives in some way, and things to work through. And what we find is that the scene work allows for this sort of distancing. So at first they're watching us, the facilitators, act in the scenes. And they're just sort of getting used to noticing what feelings come up as they watch other characters play things out. And they're slowly relating, oh, that sounds like me in the fight that I had with my mom and how I felt when that happened. And then when they feel ready, they're invited to get up and improvise themselves. And maybe that's still in the guise of other characters. So still sort of at a safe distance, not needing to bring their own story into it, because for a lot of them, that material is it feels too close to home, doesn't feel safe enough maybe to share in the group yet, but they can do that safely within these other characters. And then we build up to, where does that touch on your life experience? And do you want to show us that? And they gain a sense of empowerment and agency around their own stories and their ability to show it to others, and then have that experience of being witnessed. And I think that witnessing aspect is maybe why there's this sense of being drawn to art, because you're doing the art, but you're also getting feedback and connection from, whether it's the audience or it's visual art and it's the viewer. It's always relational. There's always a human connection there. So now I think I'm rambling, but just bringing in the importance and value, whether it's in a therapeutic group setting and it's just the group witnessing you, or you're creating a theater piece, or you are creating a film and my story is going to be told, and how validating that is, there's an opportunity to be heard and seen and understood, and the empowerment that comes from that.
Yeah, that's one of the themes that feels like it's emerging, right? Is this like Jenny talking about how important it is, and I think it even came through in the films. I remember, like, people want to hear my story, like how potent that was. And now you're talking about, like, being witnessed in a certain way as you're kind of working through these scenes and expressing yourself. And we're also talking about the very personal inner practice or inner work that's happening too. But that, I don't know, there's something here about this dual lens, in a sense, experiencing something personally through movement and dance and arts that's also can be witnessed, and each thing maybe has some power to it. And Mark, I don't know, as you're thinking about your work with dance and movement, if that's resonating for you, like what is your view of that relationship between, the work somebody is doing themselves with, let's say, learning a new dance, and the power of being seen, of having other people view what you have?
Yeah, it's really, thank you for that question. It's really interesting in terms of dance because, when we're training at a certain level to become professionals, potentially, there's so much emphasis on the body. And there's this thing where we have to look at ourselves in a mirror every day. So there's this big component of having to see yourself and having to see yourself in comparison to other people in the room. So when I teach, I either purposely don't face the mirror for the majority of the things that I teach, or in one of our studios, we have this amazing, like, big curtain that you can pull across, like, all the mirrors. So I tend to do that. And I always consistently get great feedback from my students of, like, oh, it was like, at first they're like, oh, no mirror today, and I'm like, yeah, no mirror every day. But they always usually end up being grateful for it and being like, oh, I learned so much more. I got so much more feedback because they're getting internal feedback as opposed to external and seeing a doppelganger of themselves in the mirror. So that's one component in dance in particular. But also, I really am a big fan of when I teach partnering folks up, so that you do have somebody within a specific class that's witnessing you. So that might be, we might all learn a phrase together or combination together, but then always pulling groups out, and you have a specific person to watch. And then we develop kind of critical thinking skills and critical viewing skills of, like, what are you seeing? And I always frame that around what can you affirm for that person? And also, is there anything you can offer that person? So that kind of witnessing is, I agree with Sarah, it's so important. And it can easily be built into dance experiences.
It's really great. And we're talking, so we really are drawn here as a group, so our conversation toward, the personal, in a sense. And I'd just like to give Desmond, if you want to talk a little bit about medicine and the muse, or research that's on your mind these days in terms of arts and humanities, and what you might want to add to sort of that more objective lens, if you like.
basically piggybacking on what we've discussed so far and what Sarah, Jenny, and Mark have shared, there is this connection between the internal and the external. And the beauty of the current research that we have now, like with arts, medical arts and humanities, they've made the connection. They've done the research to the point where they know and can measure the curative value of using arts and humanities in healthcare and mental health. It's not theory anymore. We're at the evidence-based development and implementations of programs. And that's where when you see the Medicine in the Muse program or programs at Johns Hopkins or Mayo Clinic, these are prestigious institutions who've done the work to understand how it's the internal and how a person sees themselves within and their interaction with the external. It all matters with how we heal mentally and physically. And I think this is what modern medicine is. It's connecting the relevant things in our lives to how we heal, how we see ourselves, and how we heal as community, how we interact on a compassionate level with other people, because that's healing and the internal and external relationship also depends on compassion. Arts and humanities teach us compassion for ourselves and others. And without the compassion piece, we don't really heal. So it's all connected and it's beautiful to see all of the growth and evolution of the things that we're doing grow into all these beautiful modalities and practices that are now considered advanced medicine, advanced mental health, advanced trauma treatment.
Yeah, and I'm curious how folks, in the group, and Dix, just want to invite you, if you want to speak at all about your work and what you're working on, just let me know. If you'd rather use the chat, feel free, but just let me know. Give me a heads up. But I'm wondering how people feel too, like the kinds of things we're talking about, the perspective we're all taking first is so personal and important from that place. And then, but the practice of quantifying, right? These things that are so meaningful and personal for some reason, right? To make it more widely available, to make people feel like there are more options than just a cognitive approach to healing. How does that resonate for folks? Like, do we feel like how does that feel for you to be trying to find numbers in a way for these things that are so, in a lot of ways, numberless? Are you down with that? Is it something that's got a little conflict for you, or how's that feel?
I'm very much in support of it. And because, especially working in an educational institution, all they want is data.
Mm-hmm.
So to have the kind of data that we have now about these practices is for me and advocating for my program and advocating for example, the initiative that Desmond and I are working on called Dance is Great Medicine, like to have that data is yeah, we all know, like you're saying, like personally and through our bodies, how important it is. But to have that data, I think for some people in particular, is also equally as important. So yeah, I'm so glad that it exists and happy to use it.
Mark, just a comment came in. Do you want to talk a little bit about more about that project that you and Desmond are working on? Where is
Oh
that?
yeah, I can speak quickly on it. And Desmond, please join me. So Desmond had approached me about the medical arts and humanities and starting some kind of programming around that at Santa Monica College. And then we landed on the idea of starting this program as an initiative within the dance department called Dance is Great Medicine. And so it exists, there's a couple of different aspects of it. We're officially launching the program in the fall, but we're doing a soft launch this spring. So part of it is an information campaign. And Desmond had created these amazing one-pagers about the proponents of dance to affect toxic stress and trauma, the proponents of dance for children, cognitively and physically, And we're also working on developing one-pagers for each dance form that's being taught within our department. So like, what are the specific benefits mentally and physically and emotionally of hip hop dance, of ballet, of contemporary, of tap, of jazz? So that information is all going to be downloadable on our website. So that's one aspect of it. And the other is community outreach. So through Desmond, she has amazing connections. We have connections already with the Los Angeles County Public Library System, the LA Department of Mental Health, Dee Dee Hirsch. So part of it is I'll be going out to those organizations and doing programming, and Desmond will be coming in and doing programming for our faculty and students, including programs on culinary arts, aromatherapy, Reiki, acupressure. So we're in this really exciting moment now of like really figuring out what we want it to be and what the actual program is going to be. So more to come on that, but that's kind of where we're at right now.
That's awesome. It's just a chance for me to name that Mark and Desmond with some other colleagues will be at our conference in April, and I imagine talking a little bit more about that project. So just for folks who are in the group, welcome to come to our conference in April. Thanks so much for that. That's really exciting. So the power of research to kind of help translate, at least translate to institutions or make material more available seems to be one of the, one theme here. Never taking away from the meaning that these things have for any one of us personally. Like I noticed at least one other person in the chat talked about starting yoga and even trauma-informed yoga for yourself. And I can relate to that too. And being guided by that. So we're holding that too. And it's a matter of kind of going back to Jenny's first comment, taking the tap out into the street, making this available, creating space for people. Sometimes research can really help with that.
I would add too about the data. So I was really surprised when I started volunteering in the state prison system in Massachusetts how little arts there is. Massachusetts is supposed to be progressive or whatever. And the golden standard for that is the New York nonprofit Rehabilitation Through the Arts that does theater and music, et cetera, in state prison. And they have somehow proven that 3% or of their participants, the recidivism rate is 3%, as compared to the national recidivism rate of 60%. So they've somehow quantified that engagement in arts programming within the prison system has drastically reduced the recidivism rate in New York. And I've been trying to pitch this to all the lawmakers in Massachusetts, especially because it costs upwards of $100,000 a year to incarcerate a man in Massachusetts State Prison, and the taxpayer dollars. So it's an investment, to invest in arts. But as of now, they do not pay for any arts programming in Massachusetts prisons. So I think having that number, though, they've proven that this reduces the recidivism rate. So it's not just about this woo-woo feel-good stuff. Like, it actually has an impact in reoffending. So I think that proves it.
Yeah, and also the challenge, sometimes the numbers don't break through for whatever reason. So, that's a call to action for all of us in this community to keep pushing in different ways, or to keep working together to find ways to push. Maybe that's part of it. Find our partners at the State House and whatnot. Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so noticing a few other comments coming through. There's some, just so folks are attuned to that, there's some resources you're welcome to follow up on in here, including other research. And I noticed, let's see if I can find this here. Share a link to the youth. Oh, okay, you got that. Okay, you got the link to the youth movie there. Great. Okay, so as we're sort of thinking about next steps for ourselves, does anybody, what do you guys have on the horizon for the next few months? Is there anything you'd like to talk about that is coming up for you that you're focused on, that is new or just maybe a continuation of the work you're doing? What do you see for the next steps for you? Mark, you talked about the project with Desmond.
Yeah, so we are again doing our soft launch of that project. And our next steps, hopefully, and goals we have are that we kind of build this thing within the dance department. And then it spreads and germinates out to other departments in the college so that it ends up becoming embodied in the art department, in the music department, in the theater department. And by doing that, it becomes ingrained in the culture of our college. So part of that work is starting with collaboration with our Public Policy Institute, and will be kind of featured in their fall symposium. So that's kind of like next steps and next dreams, is that this kind of becomes something that everybody's doing and becomes part of all our professional development practices, and obviously then outreach into the community as part of that as well. So that's the kind of the dream going forward. Desmond, did I capture that?
Yes, perfectly. We are trying to make arts and humanities, to normalize it to the point where people say, oh yes, arts and humanities are medicine, mentally and physically. And the way we do that is basically bringing all the different sectors of the community together to practice arts and humanities as tools for healing on whatever level they see fit. So it's just providing the opportunity, providing the awareness, but the opportunity, because the opportunity is the way we get people actually understanding what this is because they're doing it. Being an outsider and watching it is not the same as having someone come in and invite them and maybe into something, an art or humanity subject they've never thought of being a part of, and welcoming them into that and seeing how it works on them and for them. So that's our goal, is basically providing the opportunities for people to experience arts and humanities from a healing point of view.
And it feels like, there's one of the other things that's emerged today in this conversation is the variety of possibility. So even Mark talking about like multiple different dance modalities, or Jenny talking about multiple different pieces, expressive arts, tap, music, and then we have improv and theater. So it feels like one of the other unique things here is this broad possibility, so that what works for one person might not click for somebody else, but there's a way in, potential more doorways in to healing more broadly. So so working with institutions, or within an institution like a college, is coming for you. Working with the state legislative bodies, Jenny, in terms of trying to integrate this work into the prison system in Massachusetts. Anything else that folks are eyeballing for the next few months? Yeah, Sarah.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly speak to the data piece and moving from awareness to opportunity. So TIP has submitted for peer review a manuscript of data on our 2022 cohort of our group therapy program using TIP. And it had some positive findings around increasing interoceptive awareness, or the internal body sensation awareness, even after one session. So we're pretty excited to hopefully have that coming out soon. And then also we're on the precipice of hopefully getting some grant funding that would allow us to create a certification program in TIP, so that we can give the framework out to not just therapists, but teachers, coaches, just other community providers, so that there's access to it. So we're really hoping that 2026 will help to launch that.
That's amazing, Sarah. And yeah, thinking about like schools and community centers, younger kids, Mark, in terms of the college sort of space. And then, you know, all of you are engaging with people at all stages of life. I know, Desmond, that's been your deep work for a long time, working with folks at all stages of life. So the capacity there too, like, right? The healing is always potentially something that is accessible, more accessible wherever we are in our life. Jenny, did you want to add something?
Oh, well, I don't want to end on a negative note, but just in terms of next steps, I've just found out recently that the second film was canceled. And I just, like, as you all I'm sure know, the reality of like doing this work and taking in these stories and the heaviness of it. I feel a tremendous amount of responsibility that if I'm going to ask young people to open up, that their voices will be heard. So I'm kind of in like a pause of how do you mitigate, because my passion is accessing voices within these systems, which requires collaborating with systems that are inherently traumatizing and oppressive. And I myself am burnt out from, you know, trying to do that. So I'm at sort of a pause of like, how can I deal with that secondary trauma of taking all that in, and then the powerlessness of not being able to control the outcome always, and then still feel like it was positive for the young people. So that all those things come up too.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that here, Jenny. I'm sorry to hear that. And, you know, I think building community potentially here, right? Like all of us are involved in some form or another. Everything we're talking about is community oriented. You know, the kinds of activities we're doing here, whether we're doing things for ourselves, bringing them to other people. There are times for all of us that we lean on each other for that, like we're gonna hit walls, and just an encouragement for all of us that the more we build connection, the more we can sort of push back against trauma dynamics that really do force us apart. They work really well when we're actually separating more. So one more plug for the movie Hear Me, since it is out there and it is available, and it really will. It's very moving. I found it very moving.
If you want to see it, I'll put my email in the chat, and I'll send you the link if you email me.
All right.
Thanks for the shout out.
Awesome, for sure. All right, everybody. I'm aware of the time. I'm really grateful for you all for being here. I know clearly tip of the iceberg stuff. We'll get to pick up some of these conversations at the conference in April, and hopefully other conversations. We're all connected here, and you all are connected through CFTE, or are welcome to be. So we'll keep this going, and wishing you all well. Thank you so much for being here today. Everybody who showed up in the group as well. Take good care.